Live.
Yes,
No!
we're live. We're live. We're recording. Hi. Welcome again to Boss Lax Direct, episode number
Two.
two. Uh,
Including two.
two. Our episode number two is Star Trek and Stereotypes, which is very exciting for me, and I think probably less
Uh-oh.
exciting. Yes.
This shirt is not representative of ideals between the
Lies.
two different things
Look
that
at what
start
he
with
did.
star.
Look at what he did. Look at what he
Look,
did. He put on a yes. Go ahead. Explain
I
yourself.
did not. I explained myself. I was
Explain
trying
yourself.
to. I was being the opposite. And I was like, well, I don't have a Star Trek shirt. I have a
Oh man.
Star Wars shirt. I figure, why not? Let's see what
Oh,
happens. Oh, man. And I'm going to get so reamed for this.
you should. You
Look,
are.
if I had my freaking what's it called?
Oh boy.
The combat. Oh God. No, I remember the name. Leave me alone. Tricorder. No, that's not it. God damn it.
F minus. Are you? What are you?
I don't remember the name anymore.
So we're gonna let you live. It's okay. Are we gonna figure it out later? We'll figure it out later. Okay.
Oh my God.
We'll edit it in post.
Yeah, that's right. Put the name. Put the name right there. No,
Something
I
else.
swear.
Here's something
I
else.
swear.
What are you even talking about right now?
Oh,
Let me
leave me
help you.
alone. Leave me.
Okay.
Oh, communicator is the communicator badge. Really? It's just that. It's just that this simple of a name. Okay, fine. Whatever. I give up.
Okay. Right.
Continue, please.
I mean, fine. So so here we are again. Episode 2, and already there's complete nonsense. No one knows
That's
anything. Everything is
no one
terrible.
at all. Why don't you
Um,
lead off? Like, I'm sure
okay.
you're the prime expert in Star Trek.
No. So, all right, I'll be very honest. The reason why we're doing episode 2 as Star Trek is my favorite thing in the world. There's like my family, and then I love Star Trek, and then everything else. Okay.
Scale.
So it's a very particular scale. And then friends are in there and like work and school and whatever. Star Trek is life. And so when I my first Star Trek was the command of Jean-Luc Picard on the Enterprise D, was it? I'm gonna mess that up so bad, but
Ah,
I fuck
yes, it was the D.
yeah, it was the D,
Last I
yes.
checked.
So that was my Enterprise, and I was very young, and it was on TV, and I was very excited about all things Star Trek, and all things Brent Spinner, all things Marina Sirtis, all things like Captain Riker. I mean, what he will number one. So we'll have like, well, he's captain now, so I'm not wrong. He in the
I
new,
didn't say anything.
the new episode, in the new versions of Star Trek. Like this is a very exciting time for Star Trek fans. We have 3 different series
Yeah.
currently live on on the internet floating around. So there's Discovery, there is Picard that I think got renewed, and we have this new Lower Decks, which is very exciting. And I didn't think I would like it. It's animated. Didn't think I would like it. Actually, like it a lot. So. It's a little bit of a Star Trek renaissance, and so we wanted to spend a little time talking about what that means to us, and some of the things that went on. There's a lot of Star Trek nonsense to be talked about,
Oh yeah.
and we're excited to kind of bring that to you as part of our episode 2.
I will totally tell you I'll be more excited to learn this stuff than I am excited to talk about this stuff. Mostly because I don't know it.
Oh,
I will say in my defense, I, like you, grew up on Star Trek. And it was actually one of the things that my mom and I used to watch together.
yay!
I grew up on Picard, so Star Trek Next Generation was my Jimmy Jams. And I rolled straight through to DS9
Okay.
and loved DS9. I have so many heartfelt feelings about DS9.
DS9 was
And
the
then,
truth.
yeah. And then Voyager, which I liked, even though it was Janeway's quest for coffee.
Oh,
But
stop.
Everyone hated it. Everyone
Stop.
hated it.
No,
I
not
never saw
everybody
the
hated
episode with
it.
the freaking the space lizards. I never saw that de-evolution episode. That never occured. Um, I liked Kess before Lord knows what happened to Kess.
I mean, that's just that. Why are we starting with Janeway like that? I mean,
I did
like
it.
I
I
have a
did
lot
start with
of
Gateway.
so we did. We did start with Janeway. I have a lot of respect for Janeway. Like Janeway, I think that show particularly broke a lot of barriers in a series that is well known, like a basically an ideology that's well known for breaking barriers, right? So Star Trek is the first time there was an interracial kiss on TV. Star Trek was the first time we had multiple races on a screen together, sort of living as one. It broke a lot of barriers for things. I mean, Nichelle Nichols was mandated a little bit by Dr. King to remain on the show, even though she wanted to leave. It had a lot of important things happen for Black people, kind of behind the scenes in Hollywood, around the show. And so, like, this is TOS. So for those of you Star Trek newbies, the original series is Captain Kirk and Spock and the crew of the Enterprise, Bones, and all these other folks that are sort of a long lineage of
Chekhov, Sulu,
Chekhov and Sulu and all the original crew.
Ahara,
Uhura, that is
Ohura. Sorry.
just Nyota Uhura. You got to get it. You have to get it right. I will correct you every time. She's my girl, right? Very important.
All
Very
right, all right,
important
all right.
to our being on TV, right?
Yeah.
So the next series was really the TNG, which is the moniker for the next generation, which is Picard and Riker and Data and Worf, who my mother loves. She's it's Worf, and all kinds of wonderful people. Tasha
War fanboy.
Yar, um, yeah, very interesting. So that's where we lived life. Me and Galahad a little bit, and then you had DS9. You had Discovery, which is very new. So, but after DS9, there was Janeway and
Voyager.
Voyager. Sorry.
Then there was no. Then there
Keep
was Enterprise after that.
Yeah, then there was Enterprise, which is Captain Archer, and Scott Bakula was the captain.
Yeah.
I hope that was right. Yeah, Scott Bakula, which I watched. I watched the entire thing, and I watched it twice. And I had very mixed feelings about that show. Like people didn't like it. Like most people consider it the awkward sibling, but there were some really interesting things going on politically and talking about the Vulcans and really learning about
Mm-hmm.
you had Tuck and all these other very interesting characters.
Now Enterprise was set before TOS, right?
Yes, so Enterprise is set about 100 years before TOS,
Mm-hmm.
and also 100 years before Discovery, which is kind of where we are now with my girl Maka Burnham. Love her, Maka Burnham.
Wait, how is
Yeah.
this set 100 years before two different shows?
So that's the thing. So Discovery is actually based in the same sort of time period. Like it's about
Mm-hmm.
20 years before Kirk and the voyage of the original TOS, the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And so you have sort of like it's really focused on the Klingon Federation War. And
Mm-hmm.
that's always interesting, right? Like to focus in on like a series on sort of a wartime series.
Right, right.
Yeah. And it's based on I don't know. So
Wait,
go
but
ahead.
DS9 took place during the during the Dominion War.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean they
Yeah.
yeah. But so
It's
yes.
not like it's breaking new ground in that.
No. Well, I mean I think what Discovery is really doing that's breaking ground is
Mm-hmm.
really having a very female focused cast. So a cast
Mm-hmm.
of you have Sonika Martin Green really title like running the at the top of the show as the main character, and then you have this lovely cast of sort of high level female characters, Michelle Yeoh. You have a couple of different individuals going in and out with very powerful
Mm-hmm.
female characters. There's also a whole bunch of there's a lot of interesting ins and outs as it comes to dealing with the Klingons in particular. And I think
All right.
that this where we get into this sort of stereotypes world, like the really talking about sort of stereotypes and how, whether or not they're dangerous or not, or how they can actually be harmful. So you're looking at TOS in the 60s that had a very particular way of dealing with Klingons. Like they were considered the enemy, and they were constantly in juxtaposition with Kirk. And they had these very aggressive ships, and they looked very aggressive, and they had this warrior code, and so on and so forth. And so you see that in Discovery, but it is much more well developed, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting to kind of watch them bring that to
Okay.
life. But
I get
you're
behind that.
yeah, yeah. So there's that. You see, sort of back at home in sort of the TNG universe, you have Picard, which is like Picard was like 30 or 40 years after the last voyage of the Enterprise, and then you have another evil race discussion, whereas they are the synthetics, so the synths. And I think that is you just see it a lot, right? There's Data and the synths, or really the enemies in Picard.
Mm-hmm.
You see it with sort of TOS with the Klingons. You see it in Discovery. You see it in Voyager. Like there's certain the what is that race where the skin kept falling off? It was real gross, and I can't remember.
Wait. I'm sorry.
In
Which one
Voyager,
happened?
yeah, there was this
In
race,
Voyager,
and
the skin kept coming off.
yeah, and they
No,
were
no, no, no,
Voyager.
no.
I will maybe someone in chat can let us know if they.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Chad, Chad is mentioning that the original series makeup didn't age well either.
No, yeah, it looks. I mean, it's it's
Eh,
it's the '60s, right? Like you look at it, if you're looking at even the remixed version of the '60s show, it's very like, you can tell that there was like a box and they stuck. There was like a trash bin and they put the things on there.
Wow.
It's fun, but like I mean that's part of what I enjoy, right? Like it's same with old Doctor Who's. You watch it and you're just like, hey, there's a trash bin on wheels with a plunger stuck on it. That's exciting.
And,
I
and, and thanks, chat. Yes, I'm probably going to be the only one who's going to rant or rave about Voyager. Everyone else can go ahead and hate it or not see it.
oh man, did you watch it? I mean, Q was great. Like he was amazing. He was on
He
point.
was the best.
He was the
He
best.
was all the time.
It was real fun. But yeah, so that's sort of the history, like the list of shows a little bit. The politics were really interesting at the time, so you're looking at the
Hmm.
60s, and there's this whole um, civil rights movement that was in the height of it. And if you kind of
Hmm.
think about what was going on at the time in the 60s, it's very similar to what's going on now. So there are, these racial overtones that are were pretty tough to swallow, and you like watch the show and you can kind of tell where some writers were all about civil rights and some writers were like, I'm gonna write Klingons, that's really black people. so
Mm.
and I mean, people will fight me on that, I'm sure. Like I've read articles either way on it where people are like, that's you got to kind of let it go, or whatever. We love the Klingons, we're not stopping. Right, there's you have like their Art of War books and everything, which are pretty cool, that are based on actual cultural things, like
Like,
just like it's very based in Sun Tzu's
right,
sort of
right.
view of the world. And there are various skins out there of the Klingon warrior code that is very vaguely, like very easy to see the art of war peeking through behind it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that. And there are some also there's also some Islamic overtones too, to the sort of the racial milieu that is supposed to be Klingon.
That. actually intriguing. 'Cause I didn't think that that was a part of the Klingon setup. Like, explain that Islam bit to me.
So some people, I mean, it's so the way you write, right? Like you look at things and you have a very light overstanding of it, and you kind of bring it
Right.
into your fantasy a little bit, and you make that reflect, what your experience of a culture is, and so.
Mm,
Um, the very honor based sort of the different houses tends to be a very sort of Middle Eastern slash Islamic feel to it. So there are 24 houses on Kronos,
right.
and those houses are constantly in war. And also, what's interesting about it too is if you look at the way that the way that the Klingon art of war is presented throughout, especially in TNG. So remember that episode where Worf has to go through this rite of passage. Like we learned that he's actually only a teenager in sort of the Klingon mindset, and Picard is standing standing in the like this long hallway, and they're jabbing him with the pain sticks. And you can there. I mean, there are stories of sort of the Hashashin cultures where
Mm-hmm.
you had to go through a similar rite of passage to become a Shashin, right? Like you had to be able to
Mm-hmm.
take a certain amount of pain and a certain amount of suffering to be considered an adult, to be considered part of this culture. And so that has antecedents in a lot of places, but probably most lately in sort of Turkish uh, Hashashin culture.
Mm.
So you'll find these different milieus a little bit all over the place. Um, I think my most favorite and least favorite a little bit is the way that the Ferengi are dealt with.
Oh yeah, I do admit having some general love for the Frankie rules of acquisition, but you're about to break my heart right now.
I'm not. No, I love the Ferengi. There's nothing wrong with them. They're perfect.
Oh,
They are
oh, thank
they are a so I actually also would not dare say anything bad about the Ferengi because my mother loves them. Like to
you.
to
Blast
a
me in the
stri-
house.
to like a very strange degree. She's very much like she's like I would live on Ferenginar. I'm like, but you can't. You couldn't wear any clothes because you'd be a lady. She's like, no, I would be a man on Ferenginar and I would do all these things and I'd make all this money and we would follow the rules of acquisition. Right? What is number one? You can't get your money back. All right, so
These are easy rules to follow.
all right, so legitimately though, I did have a prize because like I feel so strongly about Star Trek. I'm very much like if someone can tell me the second rule of acquisition, and you stick it in chat, whoever does it first, I will send them something or whatever. We'll figure it out later. But if you can, I have a fancy pin for whoever knows the second rule of acquisition.
As I go look at chat right now to see who's typing.
He's the only person that I don't know how to work it. I can't. I have to work the OBS that cat
That's
works
right.
the chat.
That's right.
Um
Oh, but no one has posted anything yet. Although we do have some commentary,
okay.
colorful commentary.
Oh boy.
Uh, Doctor Who has always looked like garbage. That's part of it. Just chime, chime. I think it's supposed to be charm.
I
Um,
go
there
ahead.
were cool characters on Voyager, but it still wasn't not. It still was not good. And they're very amused how I keep calling chat instead of saying the names of the people who they actually are.
I mean, we will absolutely shout you out. I would love to be able to do that, but if I had to deal with chat and OBS at the same time, my brain would explode. So we're not even gonna deal with it. So Galahad, that's that guy's job. So you can say the people in chat if you don't want to, but or if you want to,
That was
but
fine. I will. I can say to people in chat. They seem to be like, all right. So that one was from our friend Derek.
hi Derek.
Actually, all of that was from Derek. Every single thing
Okay.
I said was from Derek.
Hassling me. What's frequent beef? Constantly hassling me. Stop it. But yeah. So that is the case. Um, there's lots to say, right? So Star
Hmm.
Trek's the stereotyping piece of it, the thing that's kind of interesting about the way that Star Trek has changed over the years. And if you look at if you're Discovery is
Hmm.
on season 3. They have done a wonderful job. Latif, I think his name is his last name is Latif, the gentleman who plays Vok slash Michael Burnham's love interest in the show. He he just does an incredible portrayal. He it's like you know he's just very good at what he's doing, and this sort of this sensitiveness of
Hmm.
pretending to be a spy who is a Klingon
Hmm.
inside, and then with a human sort of brain pattern sort of put onto him, and then being in love with Michael Burnham, and not. There's that tension between the two.
Hmm.
A very different culture. She killed his messiah. Like it's an intense conversation, and that's I think is new for Star Trek. So what Discovery is really doing and spending a ton of time on is, and I like good time, like not not wasted time at all. Like it's certainly
Hmm.
developing in a much more interesting way. How a lot
Right.
of
Right.
these TV shows now, this sort of golden age of TV, very in depth characterization, very complex plots, interesting sets, beautifully done, lots of different kinds of people showing up in the show. And they're doing a great job. Like, I love the show. Mom loves the show, which is, she doesn't like. So, all right, FYI, guys. Anytime I mention my mother, and she is incredibly outspoken. So if there's something that she doesn't like, she will tell you. And just like her, I
Flat
have
out.
learned, I have learned to speak my mind. If she liked something, though, that is so rare that I have to mention it on the show to the rest of the internet. So just okay.
But you
So just
have to
what?
make sure everyone knows because this is a rare occurrence. Like
It's
one of what the five things that she likes.
super rare. Super rare. See, so when I was growing up, she told us very honestly, she likes two things: ketchup
Oh,
and gold. That's it.
wait,
Gold,
what? These are like two extremes I thought.
gold, and ketchup. Those are the
Piece of
only.
jewelry, condiment. Piece of
Just
jewelry,
those are the only things she likes.
that's it.
That's it. She looked. I was like, "You don't like your kids?" She's like, "I love you guys. I don't like you." No, that's not true. She likes us. That's she's gonna get so mad. No one tell her I said that.
She's not watching it. It's
I
fine.
hope
It's fine.
it's too much. It's too much. Yeah. So, we can get into the stereotype thing a little bit. So the Ferengi were particularly interesting because, um, very thinly veiled sort of allegory to, um, like Israeli culture. We didn't really like it. Like there were problems with the Ferengi from the start, and people had a lot to say about it. And
Hmm.
so, unfortunately, I think they got a treatment in DS9 that was both fascinating and probably didn't go as far as it should have to sort of correct some of these things. So just like we're talking about evil races last time in D&D, like how do you fix the Ferengi problem, right? Um, I don't
Well,
know.
I guess my thing would be like. So you mentioned the relations to Islam with the Ferengi, and I was in my mind I was literally trying not to say Jewish, but I was like, that's a stereotype that like that is purported that we should not have.
Well,
But
sure. Go ahead.
but the thing, yeah, but the thing is like, what were some of the problems and how would you fix that? Because from what I remember of it, other than Quark just being a flat out like money grubbing person who had some compassion for his fellow man when if all things worked out well, like what other issues were there? Because
So,
his son was great. He actually
well,
got into Starfleet and broke a lot of the Ferengi customs in order
See,
to do that.
that's what my problem is, right? So
Oh.
like for me, so the Islam connection was really with the Klingons, not really so much with the Ferengi. The Ferengi is a
Mm-hmm.
very particular kind of race. I think my issue with Nog in particular,
Knock.
Nog, yeah, Nog. He decides, he's um exposed to a different culture, right? He comes to live with
Mm-hmm.
his uncle, exposed to human slash Federation culture, and he decides, this is what I want to be. I want to go to Star Trek. Sorry about that. I want to live as I want to live with the
Mm-hmm.
rest of these people, and I want to be part of the Federation culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so he sort of has this um, almost an assimilation story that can be very difficult to swallow when you look at the way that a lot of sort of Native American people were brought in, where a lot of cultures, when you're in a sort of if you're a minority in a majority culture, like you're expected to assimilate. And having Nog happily turn over his Ferengi culture and kind of trade that in for Federation, like quote unquote, go to school and be part of the Federation, part of Starfleet. It was a little hard to kind of take that. And as I
Mm-hmm.
watch it now, like I was fine with it like 10 years ago or whenever, when it originally came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it again and I was like, well, that's a little problematic because, you would think that Nog, he has a couple of episodes where he's like, well, I miss home or I miss you guys. Like he misses Benjamin Sisko's son and the friends he made on DS9. But it wasn't really like, I miss Ferengi culture, right?
Right.
And so it was just like this absolute dismissal of the culture that is sort of hard when you're trying to assimilate, or rather, you're telling an assimilation story, and you leave out the fact that this person is giving up everything they've known to join this new culture. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you really get back to that, right? Like, how do you address that suffering? Nobody's culture is perfect. Nobody's culture is really without flaw, and is it's just this feeling of Federation Starfleet culture is better than Ferengi culture, and I was just like, I can't say that. We how do you say that in the show? And so it was a little tough for me to kind of get,
To swallow that.
yeah, to deal with that after I'd watched it a couple times, right? Like at first blanch, it seems fine, but if you sit with it a little bit, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how great it is.
Well, Chad is also pointing out to us the Frankie had a lot of coincidental physical tropes. A lot of things with the large nose, the sharp teeth, big ears, being obsessed with money, and quote unquote no morals is one of those things you can't unsee once you hear it. And then now they continue the further comment. Generally painted like Ferengi culture is bad, Federation culture is good, which is what you were commenting about before. Um, and was this Frankie were very often one-sided, and none of the shows really gave them enough.
Another
Yeah,
thing. So that's
I
absolutely
can see
true.
that. Yeah, because usually whenever you deal with Ferengi, and by Ferengi usually Quark is the big prominent character, it's very much finances and money. Even when they make commentary about their own family, it's still in relation to money. It's greed, effectively. I have to have the most of something, even if it could hurt my family or something like that. And it was just kind of this weird take on that, which is interesting when I see that in relation to like how people in normal in our society today treat business relations with family members. That it comes across very much in that same vein of you're fine helping out family until it gets to the point where you might be screwed over, and it's like, I value me over that, and it's kind of a bad take.
So I
So.
think I think it was really presented tongue in cheek, right? The rules of acquisition were very much a situation where, like,
Hmm.
Ferengis, this is the way their culture is. It's about how much you have, and it's about suppressing your own sort of any moral niceness that you may feel for the furthering of your own things, for the
Right.
collection of things and collection of material wealth. And so like that, there are very few cultures that center around that, right? You find many more cultures that are centered around protecting the family and the clan over the nation or the state, and that can be an interesting juxtaposition that
Hmm.
turns out that way, that you can view moves in that direction. But for a culture to specifically focus on the acquisition of wealth to the ignorance of everybody else, of just ignoring everything else, that is very hard to it's very hard to sort of stomach in an interesting way, mainly because wealth is something that comes in after, like the idea of wealth, while you're when you're as part of a culture, or as you're actually building
Hmm.
a culture. Wealth is usually one of the last things that come up. The idea of money, the idea of trade, or like you need to have farming first. You need to be like in a settled place first. You need to have a family circle, a center. So having wealth be above some of these older things, very hard to imagine.
Right.
One thing that did come up that I thought was interesting, thanks frequent beef in the chat. I
Oh.
do think that it's interesting that the 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 default Ferengi culture. So this idea that you come into any kind of confluence with anyone outside of your immediate family, and your job is to take advantage of them. Um, that is that is a fascinating take on like 80s what did they call it, me first culture. I don't know what they called it in the
Oh.
80s. It's
Oh.
very
I
much
Yeah.
like,
I think it's still that. I think that's what it was actually called.
yeah, so it's very sort of New York yuppie. You go to the bank, and you go to work for your uncle, whoever's rich, and you make this ton of money, and you go to the skyrise, and you come home. It reminds me of American Psycho a little bit, which is one of my
Oh
favorite.
yeah.
Yeah, just this very sort of acquisition focused ideology. And if you think of when DS9 was really being written, and the TNG was kind of coming out, this Me Too ideology, this very 80s like wealth is the most important thing, that was what was permeating sort of the zeitgeist at the time, right? So I think that's more of a reflection of where that Ferengi culture comes from necessarily
Hmm.
than sort of I think the racial problems are pressed on top of it. So I think they like
Hmm.
mushed a bunch of things that they didn't like into the Ferengi and said, "This is who they are." So I, it's a tough one, but it's
Hmm.
interesting.
Now, how much do you feel like we talked about the Klingons, we talked about the Ferengi, and there are many other races that gotten more or less screen time throughout the years in various series of that. How much of those races that most people know from the shows and movies even, how much of their culture, who they are, what they are, do you feel came from what Gene Roddenberry had as a vision for them versus what the writers came up with?
So that's an interesting question. I think for the original show, Roddenberry was probably like Vulcans, and we haven't touched on the Vulcans yet, because they're my favorite. God
Oh
help me.
dear.
Um,
Oh dear.
they're just they're little hairdos, and I love them so much. I love them so
Go
much.
on. No, it's fine. It's fine.
I
Go on.
so I think Gene, Mr. Roddenberry, probably came into it with an idea. He probably was like, Kirk. And he needs a sidekick that's not Kirk. And so if you think about Kirk, he is this bon vivant, very much like I'm here, let's go pew pew pew, right? Like a very, actually a particularly stereotypical view of sort of space captaincy. So remember, we're coming out of this phase where you have all of this very particular pulp for sci-fi, and you have
Mm.
like bubble helmets, and you have the crazy ray guns. You have the crazy ray gun, and you have like these scantily clad ladies, and usually they're green or they've got
Oh,
extra bits, and that was sci-fi at the time. It was very pulp. It was very sort of out of the minds of people who have a lot of spare time at the time, which were pretty much like white males of a certain age. Um,
nah.
and they were just producing a particular kind of character.
Right.
You're thinking John Carter. You're thinking, I mean, there's lots of iRobot. I think no, was that
Nah,
no, not
robot.
iRobot. That's a little later. Um, I'm thinking of something very particular, and I can't remember. It's not coming to my brain right now. But very particular kind of character, and so you have that very emotionally based, like I am human, and my humanity is actually going to win out because it's a good thing to be human. And so I think part of the genius of Roddenberry and his writers were, we need a foil for Kirk. We need someone who we can bounce his like freedom off of, someone very pared down, someone very unemotional, and particularly like that outsider view a little bit. And I think that's where Spock came from, right? Spock is
Mm-hmm.
an amazing foil for Kirk, and he's able to do the science that Kirk cannot do while he's pew pew
Pew pew
pewing,
pew.
and while he's pew pew pewing and making love to alien girls. Um,
Priorities and
Priorities, right? Someone's got to do the science. It's not going to be Kirk. That's for damn sure, right?
that's what Kirk is there for. That's it.
Kirk is Kirk is there for shooting and making sure the ladies are okay, and setting, having cute sayings and looking good in the chair, right? Like that's what Kirk is for. Like
Yes.
straight up. But yeah, no, it's I think the Vulcans were probably Roddenberry. The Klingons were probably Roddenberry. And at the time, so TV was young, right? Like I don't know how. I guess you could say I don't know how complex any of these things really had to be to grab hold of audiences. It was really the first time a lot of this stuff was being thought about and shown and done. Like they're already on the bleeding edge of TV. It doesn't, they're not thinking, oh, we made some black people and we're going to be, we're going to be painting them in a particular way, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was from his mind. Like he started a lot of that creative piece of it. But I do think that there's a certain amount of dimension that was really brought in the later series and the movies that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? I do have one more thing about Vulcans that I
No, please, please, by all means, Vulcans are your favorite. I will
that
not
one
distract you from doing this.
the one thing. So you don't see. So according to according to the notes, right? Vulcan is supposed to be a Class M planet with a blue star, so a very high energy star,
Okay.
and it's a desert dwelling culture. So all of them should be brown, right? Like there is no reason. It just doesn't make much sense that all of the Vulcans that you see are white. So I find it very interesting.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
I get it.
if you think about
So this should be more like Tuvok.
there's so if you think about some of the racial, they should be brown. They should have more of a Middle Eastern look, I think, than necessarily this sort of paler thing. Because I mean, the entire planet is supposed to be a desert planet, right? There isn't really an Arctic pole. There isn't a band that is tropical or temperate. Really, it's all desert.
Right.
So there shouldn't be like this huge racial disparity as well. But again, so like we talked about last week,
Yes.
it's all fantasy a little bit. Like they're making it up, so I guess it's fine. I'm just saying they should all be
You're
fine.
just saying.
I'm just saying.
So should I dare ask you about the Romulans?
You can you can ask me about the Romulans. I find them problematic. I mean, why would you have a splinter group that goes to a different planet and then creates a completely militaristic
Version of
version
Vulcan.
of Vulcan? I thought that they're not the most interesting. The Tal Shiar, though in Picard, the Tal Shiar did get an interesting
Hmm.
pickup. They spent some more time with them. I don't know. I'm not Romulans aren't my favorite.
I
In,
don't really know much about the Romulans other than the fact that they're very militaristic. They just shoot on sight. They're like almost as bad as Klingons, but just being very much like into like conflict, like constantly.
honestly, I think that same ideology was done better with the Cardassians.
Ah.
Gul Dukat, that is
Oh, Golakot was the freaking man,
he
dude.
is.
No one talked about
Love that
Golakot.
guy.
Golakot, oh
God, oh
god.
God, oh Lord. There were times when that kid was just on screen, and I'm like, wow, wow, just wow. Ah, man, Cardassians
There
is
will
the
always
best.
be moments my mom and I be watching DS9, and freaking Golakot comes on, and we're like, oh, go, you gotta come here and watch it. Get out of the kitchen.
He is like hard news, just 100%. Like he's about literally to kill everyone in the room, and you would never be able to tell by his tone. And I love that. Like I love the fact that he could deliver a line and just be like, "Now you're all dead." Just get.
That's it.
You'll never tell what he's thinking. I mean, I love Garrick, and I love like the combination of him and Bashir. They were very fun to watch, but like just for straight up like I'm going to kick you in the nuts, and you're just gonna smile and let me do it. Gul Dukat every time. Right?
I will
I don't know.
say I of the people that I've watched from various Star Trek shows, I actually like Bashir. And I was very sad there wasn't a lot of Bashir to go around in a lot of the episodes. And Jadzia Dax.
Just yeah,
I like Jadzia Dax. It
she's
just
pretty.
the fact like the whole concept of that race and whatnot.
The
I
Trill.
didn't the Trill, and I oh my god, there so many people made the allegory with that and your the association between how people view your biological your
Identity.
gender identity essentially, how you are one way but outwardly you're probably something else. And the Trill are just like that in the sense that like the Trill, they are who they are, but they move from host to host to host. So
I think it's
there's
fan. Yeah.
actually
Go ahead.
yeah, and there's an episode of that where like one of the Klingons meets Jadzia Dax, and they know them from before.
Hmm.
And she corrects like because I think the Klingon said he, and Jadzia says like, I'm a she now, and literally without missing a beat, just corrects the sentence and moves on, and was like, oh my god, this is so great.
Yep. And so I think that is one of the great triumphs of Star
Hmm.
Trek is like being able to, really before um, a lot of the movement for transgender and LGBTQI. I'm gonna get it. There's so
LGBTQA
many.
plus.
I can yes, yes. I
I'll
love
take that
them.
torch if you don't mind.
Thank you, please. Yes. So I just think that Star Trek really gave a lot of
Yeah.
people voice. Like they could see what they were feeling on TV. and that was super important. So I want you to talk about that more. How did that how did that go for
Oh
you?
man. Oh, how so the problem is back then I didn't know much about things like gender identity and whatnot when Jadzia Dax and how the Trill represented were on air. So like I have to do it from a reflective standpoint
Mhm.
now that a lot of my life has changed and I'm more realized than I used to be. Um but just from like even from when I watched ES9 and Cisco was a freaking captain, like no joke, I was like, oh my god, they made a black dude a captain. This is great. Um, that sense of like it just seemed like natural, right? To me, like younger me watching it, it was just cool to see Cisco there, but it wasn't an epiphany of like having a moment like finally they recognize that a black person can be a captain. It was just like, oh, we now have a black captain and his Cisco, and he has a son. And he instead of running a star ship, he runs a star base and is right next to a wormhole. And everyone respects him. And this is like the coolest thing since sliced bread. Oh my god.
It was a really good
Um,
show.
but between Star Trek Next Generation and DS9, and then going to Voyager, where we get a female captain, um, you kind of see this progression of like where maybe Mr. Roddenberry or the writers or whatever saw what society was doing and saw what people were watching their shows, how people took interest. Maybe there were conventions they were paying attention to, and they just like, well, what if? Or let's respond to these um, thoughts and conversations that people are having. And maybe that's what led to them taking the progression that they did. Although I would probably argue that Voyager was supposedly the most diverse cast in terms of like real people taking the roles, that not the races that they represented it
Hmm.
in Star Trek, but they some of them were still problematic. And again, this is like reflective because back then I took it as read that like Chakotay was Native American and was played by a dude who was Native American. I don't think that's actually the case.
Yeah, it was.
Um, who
It's a good
Chakotay
question.
actually is IRL. Um, they had of they had 7 and 9. I still say to this day that the Doctor is the best Doctor in the entirety of Star Trek. Robert Picardo is like my heart and soul when it
He's
comes to
fantastic.
that.
He was just so snarky all the time. Just like,
It
yeah, just bleh.
was great. Every
He
time.
hated everyone. Totally got it. Like it was good.
I
Every
want to
time it
do
was
this.
good.
No, this poor guy gets
Oh
rolled
man.
over. Is like I'm very glad he was actually like a hologram program instead of a real person. It's like he
He
just
did.
processed all this. It's like, what the f is wrong with this crew? Why am I stuck with this?
Cool.
Great, but yeah, no. I think right now I really enjoy that, and I wish I didn't fall out of Star Trek, and that's what happened. Like after I went to college, which was around the time Voyager was on the air, I fell out of Star Trek after I moved to California, and I hadn't been able to get back into it. So when Enterprise came out, I was like, oh, I could go watch that. But then people were saying like, oh, it's not really all that great. You want to wait a little bit longer. And then after that, I lost it. I think there was something else after Enterprise. I could have sworn it was one more show before we got Discovery. Um, so Discovery I want to watch.
Mhm.
I started watching Lower Decks, and Lower Decks is amazing. And I did want to see Picard because that's like a callback to everything from TNG, including it's set after Nemesis. So,
It is.
yeah, yeah. So it recognizes all the TV show and all of the movies up to the last one, and then it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna close out this last thread of whatever. And no, Google phone, don't do the thing. Stop.
uh,
My phone is doing auto searching because it thought I was trying to
it's
like.
talking to you. I mean, that's the joy of Star Trek too. A whole bunch of technology absolutely predicted by the show.
What
So
and my phone's is Google search what I said, and the very first search result was I flipping hate Google Assistant. I want to remove from my. No,
no,
stop saying what I'm saying. God damn it.
All right. So
I fixed it. I
while
fixed it.
Galahad has takes care of his technology over there,
It's
um,
fixed. It's
too
fixed.
funny. We're looking at what 12 minutes. So I have a little
Yes.
quiz. I have a little quiz. All right, here we go. Just a little bit of a lightning round. All right.
All right, let's do this.
Favorite second in command. Favorite number one.
Are you asking me or telling
Yeah.
me?
No, you
Oh,
go.
favorite number one.
Yes.
Favorite number one.
Lightning round.
No, it's Riker. It's Riker hands down. Like, why would there ever be no?
No. I mean, fine. I mean, mine is Spock, and there is nobody else but Spock.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
fine.
who else? Favorite doctor. I think you already have
No,
said.
I already said it. It
Bro.
is the Doctor, and that is the end of that discussion.
I think I'm a very much a classicist, so I think Bones.
Mm,
Unfortunately, Bones will always be my favorite doctor. All right, favorite chief engineer.
Scotty.
Scotty. Wow. Okay.
I
I.
think over like Geordie LaForge is goddamn close, like so close. But I just love how like because Geordie is like he's really on point. He does come up with ingenious designs and ways of fixing so whatever have you. But Scotty's that like old mechanic who just like this old ship is gonna run no matter what I do. I
Gonna
just love Scotty.
keep hitting it until it goes. I'm gonna do it, and we're not gonna die in space. We're not gonna die in space. We're
Right.
determined.
It was
Oh
Scotty.
man.
What about for
Okay.
you?
Um. You know what? I think Scotty is no. I Geordie
You go to
LaForge. I
yeah.
have to say, like he was just so calm, just relaxed, and he was such a nice like friend to Data,
Yeah.
but like a badass in his own right. So, I mean, even now, like I can't imagine LeVar Burton without the thing across his eyes.
Right?
Like I
Oh
really
man.
can't. Really can is bad. Okay. Too fun.
Oh.
Security officer. Your favorite chief security.
Oh wow, that's a question. All right, so I know who was there in TOS. I know who was in TNG. The DS9 was. It was not O'Brien. Who was Chief Security on O'Brien? Was it still Worf?
Odo was chief of
No.
security.
Who?
In DS9, Odo was chief of security.
Odo. It was
Hmm.
Odo. Odo. And
Hmm. Hmm.
Voyager was. No, she was engineer. Who was
It
Chief of Security?
was. Oh no, who was chief of security?
Crap.
Chat, do you know?
Who was Chief of Security in
Help us.
Voyager? I don't remember. No,
I
who was
think it
Chief
was.
of Security?
Oh man.
Was it even a Chief of Security?
There was no. I think they were. Was it Tuvok?
No. Oh, it was Tuvok.
It was. She had a
It was
Vulcan chief
freaking
of security.
Tuvok. He's like
It was
he's freaking
Tuvok.
science.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
Kim was science.
Kim was
He got
science.
Kim
No,
was
he was
science.
chief of security.
Wow.
I came out
Okay.
in the clutch.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
okay, but all those Odo. Oh God, Odo was so snarky. He was so full of. He took no crap. Like zero crap.
He sure
End
did.
of
He did
crap.
not. He was like, "Look, I am a god. No one knows. Super secret. I sleep in a bucket, but still, Godhead." Right.
I
Like,
mean, everyone's gonna go with Worf, and I'm like, Worf got denied so many times.
I
Go
mean,
to Red Alert. No.
Worf would like to beat people up, and Worf is like, Picard's like, no, no, sit down. I'm like, you just poor Worf, just poor guy.
I mean, he just went to get excited about his job, and
He
it was like,
just
no.
like, no, denied every time. Why are you gonna deny the black man? Poor Michael Dorn, trying to get it up, can't. Just completely ready. He's ready to shoot. Stop it.
I think I got to stick with Odo. I think I got to
Oh
stick with.
man, no, you're right. I think Odo is probably the best chief of security out
Yeah.
of the set. Um,
We already did Doctor. Oh, what? I think it's
Counselor.
actually who's the best captain.
is that our last one? Okay, yeah, best captain. We'll let you go.
Oh God!
Ah!
First of all, I'm going to excommunicate freaking Janeway and Kirk. They're just right out. Both of those are gone. Um,
You
because one
can't
is coffee and one is women. It was just like neither of
stop
these two work.
it. No, no.
But I think like if I oh God, Cisco was like so cavalier and gave like, oh god, I love like when Cisco got on point, dude. Cisco's like, you want to
He was
piss me off?
ready.
Go ahead,
He
see.
was on a tear. He was. So I think most of the internet will agree with you. Do you think are you picking Cisco?
I'm trying, but Picard came from the Borg and back. This dude like took everything,
He
so I'm
did.
gonna go with Picard. I'm
Did. He
sorry.
did. He did. It's hard, huh? Okay, so I think the internet agrees that probably the best written captain, like the one who
Ri-
sort of did the most with the least, I
Oh,
think
was
is
probably Cisco.
was Cisco.
Yeah.
I think there's something about Kirk, man. Like I am
Oh,
sorry.
what? What? Explain this to me.
I mean, there's no reason why I should like him more than everybody else. I just do. I just do. And it's nothing, it's not to do with like
I
I
just have
just
to know.
he's just it's just pure style points on like just straight up I'm a gangster. Like I am here to just live my life. Like
Now,
Kirk every time. Just he's not that fight with the Gorn,
mhm.
like having to deal with oh man, I mean just dealing with Spock every day, that's not easy. Right? Like you
now,
need
now I want to know because he is the only crew is the only crew that has been reimagined and recast. Which version
which
of Kirk?
Kirk. I mean Chris Pine was magnificent. But there's some about just I don't know. Like I've watched TOS many times.
Okay, fair
And
enough.
I Chris Pine was glorious, but there's
Hmm.
something about that amber-eyed, like dead ass stare that William Shatner does. He's just like, and you just know the
Right?
Corbomite maneuver. Like his people say a lot of things about William Shatner.
Yeah.
I just his acting was so fun. He was just so fun. It's just like you're not. It's like you don't take you're not taking this seriously, but you're having fun, and I
Yeah.
respect that. And so like just pure fun factor, and that's why I watch these shows, right? Like I'm some of it's very serious, and some we talked about the stereotypes and we talked about the different races and things like that, and how much it actually gave to people, like to see themselves represented in an interesting way. Was it perfect? No. But like at the end of the day, like I watch Star Trek because it is fun. I love the nonsense science. I like the mirror universe. Take me there. Like wear your little nonsense beard. Like do whatever you need to do. Like it is just a fun series. And I think Kirk is like an embodiment of the fun of the series. And it actually
Mm.
harkens back to a lot of sort of the reason why people were writing sci-fi pulp in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, and really trying to imagine what the world is going to be like far in the future. I see, and
Right. Right.
like we talk about Star Trek as a show, I think for a lot of people, like when they imagine the future, they imagine Star Trek, right?
Mm.
And so, like, I think it's super important for shows like Star Trek to show, to show black faces, to show
Right.
Asian faces, to show cultures that are not like Starfleet and be respectful about them, because it really informs the audience about how to really handle the unknown, right? Like you bring some of that to your interactions. I know I definitely have. Like I've seen people, it's strange. Like, the Borg is a fascinating culture, right? Like they come
You
in.
know.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say there's one hive mind, and then they just roll up and like, yeah, we're gonna take your entire culture, deposit
And
that into our
and we're just
database, and then make you us. That's
we're
fine.
yep. We so I just wanted to time check. We've got 3 minutes till the end of the show, and we just got to the Borg. We could obviously do this for another hour. But maybe we won't. Well, maybe we will. Maybe we need an episode
Maybe we need to expand
2.2,
by another hour. Yeah.
or well, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's fun. But yeah, last ideas. So, using what you learn in Star Trek
Okay.
is really how to deal with other people, other cultures, and I think it's super important that good examples of that are around for people to ingest and then bring to their day-to-day lives. And so that's whenever I recommend Star Trek, it's really about sharing that love of culture, love of exploration, and that love of
Hmm.
the new, and being respectful of that. You know, that the prime directive, hugely important, and a central tenet of it. So
Excellent.
that's why we're doing it for episode 2. How about you? Does it?
I mean, I'm kind of all for that and a bag of chips, so I agree with every bit of word you said about that, and I really wish that Discovery, well, Picard's done, I think.
Yep, I think that.
And Lower Decks continue to thrive and show people what it's like to actually like cooperate and work together for this big common goal. And actually, one of the things like the whole first directive about first contact that every Star Trek show seems to break left, right, and center. Um, Putting our best foot forward and showing them that we also come from a diverse set of cultures that are working together, and not just cultures um from other planets and other systems, cultures within our own planet. And if we show that, then it's like, okay, that kind of camaraderie is something that sorely needs to be shown and taken in, and have people be reminded about that.
Sure. I absolutely agree. Okay, so I think that's it for us. I
Yes,
am Disdain,
I am
Vulcan Every
Galahad.
Day, yeah, and we will see you next Sunday.
Yep.
This has been Boss Lax Direct. Bye bye.
Bye bye.